Power creep? I don't know, she looks pretty hot to me. What do you guys think? Zenless Zone Zero, Identity Crisis the Gacha game, Gunner Bait Paradise, and the Gacha gaming manifestation of generational sin. Since almost day one, ZZZ has never managed to stand on its own two legs. The constant identity crisis between narrative and gameplay, the constant comparisons to Wuthering Waves, and having to carry the cross of both Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail for simply having the name Hoyoverse slapped onto it. Not too long ago, the ZZZ development team hosted a seemingly impromptu dev talk to push forward plans for their 2.0 content updates to keep players invested in the game. Early content reveals, gameplay reworks, and the possibility of buffing older characters, somehow before Honkai Star Rail could even get their first batch of confirmed character buffs out. Aren't you the game with the bigger staff and budget? What's taking you people so long? But just when things were starting to look like an upward trend for this crippled third child, the beatings continued following continual increases to endgame enemy HP inflation in response to the power creep post version 1.4. And if that wasn't somehow enough, the hardcore ZZZ crowd has come out of the woodwork to defend this by telling everyone else that they just suck at the game. I can only assume because Hoyoverse are paying them to. Wait, they're doing it for free? Oh no, that's even worse. I will be addressing the issue and why the situation is absolutely a developer-made problem and not a player one. A lot of which has been conveniently funneled into and out of the mouth of EO, so I won't have to go far to find what I need to talk about. Unlike my previous video covering Saint Tontos, I will not concern myself with it if my opinions or tone offends anyone in the slightest. This is a discussion concerning the future of a game I regularly play, not an open letter talking about someone's behavior. EO is just the loudest mouthpiece by which the elitist ZZZ crowd can be personified through, so do not take this personally. To start everything off, we have to talk about the biggest misinformation about this game, that Zenless Zone Zero is a fighting game. This is a phrase parroted on the regular to justify the hardcore player's stance on the matter, and for EO, it's a necessary classification for him so he can use his past fighting game experience to validate his opinions as the correct opinion when speaking on this matter. Why do they keep saying this? Because the developers said so one or two times. Now, say it with me all together now. Actions speak louder than words. And based on the actions of the ZZZ development team in what the design of Zenless Zone Zero is, it is not a fighting game. And even if it is, it's a really, really bad fighting game and has zero understanding of what a fighting game actually is. If you were to go into your internet search engine of choice and type in fighting game and were to look through the list, no result will match up even remotely close to what Zenless Zone Zero plays like as a video game. Not Street Fighter, not Tekken, not Marvel vs. Capcom, not Mortal Kombat, not Soul Calibur, not even Smash Brothers, not any of them. Fighting games are primarily designed around 1v1 encounters between characters from a massive roster that are balanced around common playstyle archetypes and scaled in power to be as equally matched as possible without becoming too homogeneous. Counterpicks not included. You get a lot of mileage out of kit functionality through unconventional button input mechanics such as half circle forward or quarter circle, I hope I'm getting those right, and there is always PvP functionality. Zenless Zone Zero does not have any of that. Its roster of characters can be as restricted and poorly scaled, or plentiful and still poorly scaled, but at least it's in your favor, based on the RNG of the player's gacha pulls, drive disc luck, and daily account management. I cannot go into a select screen, pick the Thanatos ethereal enemy as my avatar, and win by stalling out the timer with an HP advantage like I'm a Sonic main in a Smash Ultimate tournament. Conversely, the AI cannot pick Miyabi and make me wish I grew up playing with Barbie dolls instead of video games. I cannot challenge any real-world players, I cannot use a wide variety of combos and situational moves, as there is only 4 or 5 buttons or so to press, and we will never see a balance patch to prop up low-tier, low-pick rated characters. The alleged character buff coming soon does not count unless it becomes a regularly occurring process. Otherwise, it's just a knee-jerk reaction, like the situation with Zhongli in Genshin Impact. However, if you were to go in and type in hack and slash games, you will find a list much more mechanically appropriate to ZZZ. Devil May Cry, Nier Automata, Bayonetta, God of War, so on and so forth. Hack and slash games are primarily single-player PvE instanced encounters with varying degrees of combo depth, but never on the same level as fighting games, and focuses more so on reflexes and unique mob mechanics. Oftentimes, the enjoyment comes from the sheer spectacle and visual experience rather than pulling off some insane 20-plus combo, though it is still possible depending on the hack and slash game, and wondering why you still haven't learned how to drive at age 33. Add on to that any number of smaller pieces of gameplay to break things up, such as minigames, exploration, environmental puzzles, or heaven forbid, platforming. I have no personal experience with platforming in character action hack and slash games, but I've heard old God of War platforming was atrocious. Now, which genre does Zenless Zone Zero sound closer to based off of my descriptions? Yes, I thought so too, the hack and slash genre. So, you may now kindly take back all your fighting game rhetoric and stop using it on people before I report you in violation of the 8th Amendment to the Constitution for cruel and unusual punishment. This is a joke. Relax. Okay. I'm gonna quickly go over this next point and then move on. The point that the HP inflation is a direct result to the decibel changes. This response would only justify the HP inflation from version 1.3 to 1.4. You know, the relevant patch that the decibel changes were made in. At this point, you're just using the decibel changes as a scapegoat to avoid answering the question at hand. We are at 1.7 now. Stop using this as an excuse. Unless the gameplay system changes referred to in the 2.0 dev talk will have massive changes on combat balance going forward, there is no excuse for the HP inflation. And even if that was the reason, it was still a bad decision to raise the HP right now when we don't have those gameplay changes in our hands, and only further continues to damage the reputation that the game is trying to rebuild, over and over and over again. Let's continue onward to the next counterpoint. Players don't learn how to play the game. Absolving the ZZZ team of any wrongdoing and putting all responsibility on the player. Of the big 4 gacha games, Zenless Zone Zero gives you the least information on how to play the game. EO and friends love to repeat themselves about how the game has told you from the start what you need to do to succeed, and that it is simply the players not following this information to achieve victory. What they fail to mention is how shallow this information is. Character trials are so incredibly bare bones, providing the minimum amount of information required to use a character's kit, and that is it. It does not provide tutorials for advanced swapping or animation canceling techniques. It does not suggest when or how long you should have any particular character on the field, and it oftentimes prioritizes telling players useless information that would sabotage the player more than help over something actually useful. Sokaku is a prime example of this. Shut up for a second. One of the ways Sokaku can transfer her damage buff to the swapped-in teammate is by holding the EX special input immediately after an assist follow-up, at which point Sokaku's parry animation will change at the end to a fly the flag attack and activate the assist prompt, allowing the person coming in to get the buff. You are not told this in the tutorial. Instead, the Sokaku tutorial decides it's more important for you to spend an entire segment hitting enemies 6 times with her enhanced basic attack for extra damage on your support agent. The information to let you know that Sokaku's parry animation can be segued into a fly the flag is found buried in her skills, specifically the assist follow-up section. Sokaku is not the only agent with bad tutorials. Coletta's tutorial fails to mention that she can gain her unique buff, Furnace Fire, from an assist follow-up. Zhu Yuan's tutorial fails to mention you can gain one enhanced shot shell from a dodge counter. Set's tutorial doesn't tell you that a dodge counter can segue into a faster EX special charge when it really should, and Ellen's tutorial doesn't mention that she can gain quick charge from a perfect dodge despite how dependent Ellen is on generating flash freeze for her kit. I should know. I own an M2 Ellen with a W engine. She's the reason I installed the game. Well, okay. Maybe the enemy tutorials can pick up the slack on what you need to learn to play the game. Oh wait, there isn't any! This is just a straight up downgrade to other competitors in the space for providing information to players. Girls Frontline 2 provides a massive breakdown for enemy skills, passives, buff and debuff effects, immunities, and weaknesses. It even lets you see a sequence of events for what bosses will use on their next turn every turn in a cycle. Honkai Star Rail lets you examine enemy lineups and read all their movesets to get a basic outline of what they're going to do and how you might be able to prepare for it. Even Genshin Impact provides a tutorial pop-up for every mob and boss with a basic outline of their mechanics and how to counter them when you first encounter them in a combat section. EO only really has one response he can use at this point to go into free training and figure out the characters and rotations yourself or alongside a guide. Oh boy, don't we love training areas? EO, newsflash. One of the major reasons why fighting games are so unapproachable to newcomers is because it's the only genre where learning organically as you play is so undeniably inferior to sitting in a static training area and grinding out a combo for hours until you perfect it. The only other example I can think of is trying to learn building in Fortnite, but considering no build is a recent addition and is so incredibly popular by people who hate building so much, myself included, I think you can tell where I'm going with this.
Morty! Rick? Where are you?
I'm in Fortnite, Morty. I'm cranking 90s, Morty. I'm cranking fucking 90s.
And since I had just explained how ZZZ is not a fighting game, maybe it's for the best you don't bring up the only actual similarity between the two being that they have the most boring way to effectively learn the more technical aspects of your character. It's not even a good training room. The enemy pool to choose from has not been updated since version 1.0, and the environment doesn't mirror a practical scenario for endgame content, like Shiyu Defense or Deadly Assault. Not even the Battle Tower. No waves, no environment buffs, no stopwatch feature to track your kill times, and level 70 mobs inside the training area are not representative of level 70 Shiyu Defense, Battle Tower, or Deadly Assault mobs. You can't even fight more than one enemy at a time. So, if the tutorials don't cut it, the training area is not up to scratch, and my only source of information is from a condescending person like EO, why would I want to put up with that? Moving on to the next excuse, you need to grind better drive discs. What do you think I've been doing, EO? I cannot believe the sheer amount of arrogance on display when your smoking gun is an M3 Soldier 11 performing a hitless run on a fire-weak Deadly Assault mob with only 2 bad substat rolls on their drive discs, and they reach the 20k point threshold in the last couple seconds of the fight. EO. This doesn't encourage me or inspire confidence that I can pull it off with a team of 3 and worse drive discs. All I'm thinking is that Soldier 11 isn't gonna clear the next Deadly Assault reset. Gear grinding in a majority of these games suck, and telling people to grind better gear is the equivalent to telling people that they just have to keep missing clears until RNG finally decides to bless them with competent gear. And if your criticism is that others fixate too much on Pridwin for their team comps and gear setups, let me remind you of something. Stamina is scarce. Resources are scarce. Building characters takes a long time. Of course, people are going to refer to popularly referenced source material for building characters. They are attempting to minimize lost investment on making the wrong decisions with their account. Why, just recently, I dumped a massive amount of resources into getting anomaly proficiency substat rolls for my Vivian, and I didn't get a single piece with more than +2 anomaly proficiency. Was that my fault? Of course it wasn't, but you sure want to make it out to be like it's my fault, like I've done something wrong, EO. And saying that it shouldn't be a problem just because we get free drive disc attempts every week from Hollow Zero means nothing if those attempts don't have a minimum guarantee tied to them. It's just more chances at garbage. Honkai Star Rail let you get free planar ornament runs every week, yet the relic system was still ass. Yes, between all three Hoyo Gachas, ZZZ is objectively the best one when it comes to farming gear. No random substat reroll values, a plethora of crafting materials, and generous amounts of main stat selectors from patch to patch when compared to the other games. However, there are still way too many things that can go wrong when rolling gear that make these improvements go often underappreciated. The best way to build good drive discs will always be to pull a character's signature W engine so you don't have to build good drive discs, just like with Genshin Impact and just like with Honkai Star Rail. The only gacha game as of right now in the modern gacha game space that I feel happy with the gear system in is Girls Frontline 2. My apologies, Wuthering Waves and Saint Tone Toss. You're just gonna have to take the L on this one. If you play Girls Frontline 2 for yourself, I promise you'll understand why I feel this way. In Girls Frontline 2, all the substats available for a single piece is revealed to you upon immediately when getting the piece, so you do not have to level it up 1 or 2 times to figure out if it has everything you want on it. From there, it is relatively cheap to level up, and you just have to level it up once, with a handful of maybe 6 to 9 purple rarity for a gold rarity piece. From there, it rolls every single substat immediately between a value of 10% and 200%. If you are not happy with the values it initially pulls, you can re-roll for the exact same resource and money cost an infinite number of times without a ramping resource cost. So theoretically, you can re-roll the same piece until it gets the stats you want without having to throw it away because it all rolls on flat defense. And not even just that, in a recent patch for Girls Frontline 2 in the global version, they introduced an item in CN known as the Fire Chip, or at least we refer to it as the Fire Chip, where you can permanently increase the base value of an attachment's substat until it hits its cap, and then from there, any further chips added will permanently increase the upgraded value until it hits the maximum of 200. So theoretically, with enough time given, and if you're dedicated enough and you gather enough of these chips, you can max out every single substat on every single attachment on one character, or even more characters, as many characters as you want, as long as you continue to play and regularly keep up in Girls Frontline 2. I cannot think of another gear system that is as good as that. I apologize once again to Saint Tone Toss. Now that the GFL2 glazing is out of the way, I would like to remind everyone, in an attempt to strawman people complaining, EO used an example of a struggling player who was attempting to use a Caesar, Trigger, and Xingyi team who chose not to play events when they were running for the free W engines and actively refuses to play Hollow Zero every week. This is your champion. I really hope you have a plan B. The last counterpoint I want to address is this, that the HP inflation is an intended design decision to gradually raise the game's difficulty over time, and players' skill should be constantly improving to meet that challenge. First of all, this makes no sense for anyone coming into the game late into its life cycle, as the Shiyu defense rotations will be so high in HP inflation by then that they will never be able to catch up. This argument would only work if older Shiyu defense rotations remained permanent after a new one comes out, but that is not the case right now. Secondly, if you have ever taken a physical course during PE class or high school, which everyone did, hold on, let me cook for a second, hold on, you would know this very common phrase. Use it or lose it. Be it physical or mental conditioning, if you do not keep up with a specific activity consistently enough, you will lose your ability to perform it as effectively as you did at the height of your performance. Endgame content usually takes less than an hour to complete and only refreshes at most on a bi-weekly basis. Otherwise, the majority of content in every given patch is low difficulty combat encounters focused more so on providing gimmicks than actual challenges, or non-combat focused events where no conventional game knowledge is being used. I'm sure your Kara canceling is really helping you out when you're making bouquets for Vivian. Without substantial content or incentives for players to continually keep their skills sharp, they will inevitably stagnate or even decline in ability as the game continues to get harder and harder. Gacha games are not traditional games. They are not meant to be played for more than 10 minutes a day outside of major content patches and updates. If you are someone who puts an ungodly amount of hours into these games to min-max rotations and clear times, then I guess you really
should be the only motherfucker getting praise in the Genshin community because I don't spend money on Genshin Impact. If you want a what the f?
If you are still skeptical of the idea of HP inflation being used as a manipulative tactic to get people to spend more money on the game and pull more limited character duplicates and W engines, I would like to ask a moment for your time as I dig up this 12-year-old time capsule. A video from Total Biscuit. WTF is Dead Space 3. Dead Space 3 was one of the games early on in the mid-2010s that Electronic Arts was attempting to heavily monetize alongside Mass Effect 3 before we even got into the loot box craze during that time period a few years later. Let me play the clip.
So come on, it's unreasonable to exploit your franchise fans that way. It really, really is. So I'm pressing T to go to downloadable content here, and this is what's available. Someone said there was like 11 content packs. There isn't. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4... 5, 6, 7 pieces of DLC. Bot capacity upgrade. This is an example of what I'm talking about here. Each scavenger bot it doubles the amount of resources that you get. $5, pay to cheat. Why do you want to do that? Cheats used to be free. They used to be codes, and they used to be fun as well. This, the funny thing is, like, something like this would probably have ended up being a cheat code. This I'm okay with. The bot accelerator, same thing, decreases harvesting time for the scavenger bots. This stuff shouldn't be in there. This definitely shouldn't be. Now, the main reason, if you want a main reason for why this shouldn't be here, rather than, oh, it's exploitative, try this on for size. When you put that into your game, it's business practice dangerously meddling with game mechanics, balance, pacing, and overall game design. That should never happen. You want to know why? Because you end up in a situation where they deliberately decrease the amount of resources that you get in order to encourage you to buy stuff. So they're screwing with the game balance in order to make you buy things. I cannot speak to whether or not this game does this. From what I can tell at the early stages, it doesn't, but it could. And if you introduce that element into your game, then you're going to also introduce that element of doubt into your player base. You don't want to do that. It's stupidly exploitative, and it needs to go. This stuff should not be there at all.
When a video game presents payment options beyond an initial entry fee, there is a profit incentive to artificially tamper with and butcher elements of your game to get people to spend money in it. Now, I understand this is a gacha game, we all came in free to play, and I'm sure we are all aware of this by now, but there is, of course, a limit to everything. And in this case, the most important thing in any gacha game for any player to stick around is maintaining the illusion that the player is, 1, having their time respected, and 2, they are in control. Neither one of these things existed in the first place, but it's the illusion that is most important. If a player feels their time is being wasted or their effort is meaningless, they will be less motivated to stick around with the game. Of course, they can go down the route of diving deeper into the technical side of the game's mechanics, but that should happen naturally by someone's personal drive to go to the extra mile. What we are seeing is effectively a low-skill player tax, as they're being punished for not dancing like a fool at the whims of the developers. And to continue on my previous point about someone wanting to go the extra mile by themselves, I would like to remind everyone that because of the daily nature of these gacha games, both the stamina dailies and time-limited events, that these games are designed inorganically in a way for you to treat it like your forever game. Most people, if not almost everyone in this space, probably are not playing these gacha games on a daily basis because they want to. It's because they are incentivized, or more specifically, punished for not picking these games back up every day, in one way or another, to greater or lesser extents. Since these people will almost always be stuck around playing the game, there will be a degree of fatigue that will be felt as they continue to do day-to-day tasks, especially if the games do not update themselves consistently with quality of life updates to make it feel like there is some positive change and they can keep going as they have less and less motivation to log in every day. And that is just something that is just going to happen when you keep playing for something forever and ever. I highly doubt you can keep playing your favorite video game all the time and you need a break for it at one point or another. Gacha games don't afford you this because they don't want you to. And on that note, if somebody is tuckered out from just simply the day-to-day menial tasks within a gacha game, what makes you think that they want to make the personal push to go the extra mile to really learn this stuff? More likely what's going to happen is that fatigue is just going to be further compounded by the fact that they can't clear the content that they are forced to do bi-weekly, at which point that will be one more straw on the camel's back until it eventually breaks. And if you're one of those who is attempting to make an appeal to triviality by saying that they are missing out on just a small amount of polychromes, don't even try it. If it's not such a big deal, then why are you the one making a big deal out of it in the first place? Because people want the polychrome for themselves. Every little bit is incredibly important, especially for a free-to-play player, but I would actually make the argument that it's more so like the mid-spenders, or the ones who are quite comfortable putting a little bit of money down, because if they feel compelled to purchase additional currency packs to make up for losses in one way or another, be that they cannot clear endgame content or they lose a 50-50, it is in their best interest from a resource point to buy the most expensive pack, rather than getting a worse return investment on the lower value packs, assuming of course it's within their budget. So with that in mind, it might be a good idea to consider the possibility that on the average situation, if someone can comfortably afford spending money in this game, they're probably going to go for the best value, which would in this case be the $100 pack, or the currency equivalent to the $100 pack based on your country. If I were to provide a solution to this situation in general, I would just argue changing up the reward systems for endgame content entirely across most, if not all, of these games. Specifically, I would just suggest to front-load the premium currency, similarly to what we already have with the Deadly Assault mode in Zenless Zone Zero, but instead I would apply that to as many modes as possible, but still provide additional challenges after the end of the polychromes, but instead provide something more tangible to an endgame account, probably something like the hamster cage passes or something equivalent for endgame progression and min-maxing character builds. To bring up Girls Frontline 2 as an example again, I would like to present their two endgame modes, Gunsmoke Frontline and Expansion Drills. Gunsmoke Frontline is an endgame mode for the game's guild system where players have 1 week from when the mode opens up to accumulate enough points for their guild to meet reward thresholds. You are provided 2 reward tracks, one for personal performance and another for the guild's accumulative performance. These rewards include resources, guild shop currency, premium currency known as collapse pieces, the aforementioned fire chip at the end of the track for min-maxing gear, and even some standard event pulls. Guild shop currency is particularly useful as it is your main means for leveling up and gearing out Papasha, a free 5-star character given to every account who reaches the appropriate level to where they can join a guild, as all of her upgrades, both her weapons and her personal duplicates, are earned slowly over time by making purchases inside this guild shop. The gameplay of Gunsmoke Frontline itself is a choice between a generic mob encounter for a measly 800 points, this is more so for beginners who do not have finished accounts, or one of the game bosses for a theoretical unlimited amount of points based on the strength of your team, and how much damage you can deal in about 7 turns. When selecting a mode, you can choose between 4 buffs that refresh daily, 4 of your own characters, and a 5th character taken from any guild members as long as they are set on their personal character profiles. Suffice to say, if you have a whale on your guild, you will get a lot of value out of this. The battle itself is relatively easy and is more so a puzzle to get the most points out of damaging the boss focusing more so on turn priority and positioning rather than survivability. Papasha in particular is incredibly good for this mode, incidentally enough, as her mechanics are designed around a mech who acts as another unit on the field, which is helpful because almost always the boss will include a mechanic that involves a certain amount of allies tanking a specific hit to leave the boss vulnerable afterwards. Since the mech counts as one additional unit, Papasha is almost always useful in this mode at one point or another. You can challenge this twice a day or more if you spend currency to refresh, and you can bring in the exact same guild unit as before. However, you must use a different set of 4 characters and a different buff. I must make a note that Gunsmoke Frontline is rather negatively looked upon within Girls Frontline 2 discussions, as there's no real difficulty within the mode, resulting in it feeling like a chore, no matter how tantalizing the rewards on offer are. However, with that being said, you only need to earn 1,400 points or so, roughly twice per day, for 7 days to reach the maximum personal rewards. So with time and greater account investment, you can get more points out of your runs, reach the personal reward track cap at 20k much faster, and be on your way. Me personally, my account investment is to the point where it should only take me about 3 to 4 days before I get all the rewards, and then I can just simply claim the guild rewards as they gradually unlock it during the remainder of the event. Now, if even that is not worth your time personally, there is always the auto function system within Girls Frontline 2. The AI unfortunately won't behave with the same level of intelligence as a player, not even close, but the option yet remains if you are not concerned with your performance and you will just take whatever you can get from the Gunsmoke Frontline mode. Now, onto the much more positively received endgame mode, we have the expansion drills. This is your typical bi-weekly resetting battle arena similar to Spiral Abyss, Shield Defense, and so on. However, there are a couple important things done differently. Expansion drills only requires you to deploy a single team and complete the objective present. Clear the map, hold a point, escort a target. It varies based on the level. The additional rewards are based on meeting the bonus objectives. Completing within a set number of turns is always one of them, however, I really found this one to be the difficult one. The more challenging ones typically are to eliminate a key enemy target within the first few turns, or to kill multiple enemy units in a single unit action. Depending on your account, the difficulty will come from having to employ certain strategies to complete these tasks, such as making a difficult push to a spot on the map or setting up enemies for a single multi-kill. Because of the nature of Girls Frontline 2 being a strategy game, there is a greater variety of gameplay on offer thanks to map design, enemy varieties and tactics, as well as randomly generated buffs provided to enemies exclusive to this mode. The final floor includes a boss fight with once again a set of objectives. Though with the exception of one overtuned boss upon her debut, I have had no difficulty finishing subsequent bosses in this mode. Completing this floor rewards the last remaining currency in the expansion drill and unlocks the 11th floor to re-challenge the boss, with about a dozen different modifiers that are customizable, with point values attributed to each one depending on how strong you choose to make the modifier. You are given a lot of leeway to adjust these to your liking, as you only need to set an equivalent of 18 points out of 40 and kill the boss without the need to complete any additional objectives to earn the rewards. As of right now, that still remains to be true, and I am unsure as to whether or not they will increase the point requirement beyond 18 at this point, but this is important to consider. The most valued reward in question being the basic info core, which are invaluable to progressing your units and activating bonus skills on their progression lines. If you are free to play or use a small lineup of dolls, the basic info cores are nice but not necessary, as you will have plenty of them to use so long as you are smart with them and play new event content regularly to earn them. If you own a lot of characters, you will likely be strapped for these, but will probably have an account well invested enough to clear the floor 11 drill with ease. The point I'm trying to make with presenting Girls Frontline 2's endgame modes is that there are many different ways that you can provide endgame content to the player without just simply artificially inflating HP or creating mechanics that are annoying to play around in most situations, to the point where a player feels compelled to pull for the next character. You can create content involving a guild system, which as of right now none of the big four have at their disposal, and it would probably be in their best interest to have made one by now. though if they haven't done it at this point, I doubt they ever will. Or they can provide a form of optional content on top of their original modes that is even more difficult, but is designed in a way to provide a customizable experience and allows people to flex with their accounts if they so wish. Posting 40 out of 40 runs on Girls Frontline, for example, I'm sure someone will get an ego boost out of it. As for the endgame rewards, none of the big four offer a consistent supply of standard pull tokens as much as Girls Frontline 2 does, with its frequent rewards in both Gunsmoke Frontline, limited time events, and smaller events that run during patch downtime as well. As for the basic info course, it would only make sense if someone is in an endgame account situation that they would just want to continue to min-max their setups. So it would be very tantalizing to provide an item on offer to make it a much easier experience to reach that end goal for whatever character they want to build. Since Girls Frontline already has a system in place for perfecting gear, I think this might be a good idea for the Big Four to consider, providing an item that allows people to more easily tune their gear to what they want to try and min-max those setups. They're never going to do that, though. You thought the TV mode filtered out so many people? Try to get them to play a game like a grid-based, strategy-based, turn-based RPG. They're just not going to do it, so the Big Four's not going to feel threatened by them at all. And with that, I have said all I wanted to in regards to the Zenless Zone Zero HP inflation controversy. Since day one, I have always treated ZZZ as a sort of speculative investment that had the potential through trial by fire to become the better game amongst Hoyoverse's lineup. As of right now, I am continually being let down by the potential ZZZ could reach. It's really frustrating how everyone wanted the TV mode gone, they got their wish, yet now all ZZZ is known for is an example of how Hoyoverse can only improve their games by removing content from them instead of actually improving them. I wouldn't make a request like this under normal circumstances, however, I feel compelled to do so now. If you agreed with my takes up to this point, I would ask that you share this video and raise awareness of the situation. Not subscribing, not liking, I want you to share this video. Of course, the former two can also spread the video out if the machine overlord that is YouTube's algorithm smiles upon my fledgling channel. As I said in my previous video about St. Totas, I would rather be called out for supporting ZZZ and the ever-seemingly stagnant company that is Hoyoverse, rather than have hardcore players like EO drag what dignity I have left playing this game through the mud. But until then, this has been a long video, and I'm clocking out.